Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first of today's two Ask the Expert webinars. During the session, we have an occupational therapist on hand to answer our questions about Parkinson's. I'm Donna Greening, Parkinson Canada's Education and Program Innovation Coordinator. Parkinson Canada acknowledges that we are located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. We respect and affirm the inherent and treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to live, work, and learn here. We recognize the need for programs, advocacy, and research by and for Indigenous people living with and affected by Parkinson's, and commit to growing partnerships with Indigenous leaders to develop our understanding and support. To access closed captioning, you can click on the CC Captions button and then click on Show Subtitle. We're very grateful for the expert speakers who join us at our webinars to share their knowledge. If you have questions about today's topic after the conclusion of the webinar, we encourage you to contact your healthcare provider or Parkinson Canada's support and information team. There's no need to take any notes during the webinar. We'll be sending everyone here today a link to the webinar recording along with related resources and links. For this Q&A format webinar, we will be selecting questions from our expert or for our expert from those that are submitted during registration and also from the Q&A tab. That tab is found at the bottom of your webinar window. We will not be taking questions from the chat window. Also, please note that we will not be addressing questions related to individuals' medical situations or providing personalized medical advice. For concerns about your health or treatment, please consult your healthcare director or your healthcare provider directly. When the webinar ends, we hope that you'll take a moment to fill out our survey that we use to evaluate our programming, ensuring that we're delivering content that's relevant to the Parkinson's community. Now, let's meet today's expert who's here to answer your questions. Roseleen John graduated from the University of Manitoba, earning a Master of Science in Neuroscience and a Master of Science in Occupational Therapy. She has occupational therapy experience in multiple clinical settings, including neuroscience, medicine, and orthopedics. She has additional training in motivational interviewing, co-op approach, and visual perceptual interventions. Roseleen joined the Edmonton Parkinson Movement Disorders Program in 2022, and she is currently a faculty member in the OTA PTA program at Grant MacEwan University. Welcome, Roseleen. Let's get right to our questions. Let's see. So the first one that we'll tackle is while decisions to move to a nursing home or assisted care facility are deeply personal and context specific, what are some of the factors to consider in deciding the right time, especially if the person with Parkinson's is a senior with other health challenges? Roseleen?
Well, first of all, thank you, everyone. I'm happy to be here today. This is a very personal decision and it can be emotionally complex, but typically you want to consider the person's level of independence in their activities of daily living. Are they safe in their daily routines? Can they be reasonably safe in a room or a home for extended periods? What is the capacity of the caregiver? Like, are they feeling more burnt out? Does that person require one person assist for most of their activities? Or what are the availability of supports in the current home? And that's personal supports, like people-based, or also equipment, right? Is your home, or can your home be set up in a way that can help that person continue to age in place and to continue to go along in your Parkinson's journey for longer periods? But if things like bathing, toileting, mobility, medication management, you start to need one person assist continuously, and that might be a sign that things are becoming a little bit unsafe independently or overwhelming, and that's often a key signal.
Great, thanks. Do you have suggestions on how to get in and out of a regular car more easily? I use the door as a lever for getting out with another person pushing the door open. For getting in, it's a struggle. I can't seem to swivel around on the seat.
Yeah, so getting into a car can be a bit challenging. There are some tips and tricks. What you can do, or what I like to advise, is to always pull your car seats back as far back as possible to give you as much space in the front. You can use a swivel cushion if you can get those off of Amazon, or even something as simple like a plastic bag temporarily to just place it on the seats to reduce that friction so you can pivot a bit more easily. You're going to back up to your car seat as though you were sitting onto a chair, right? What I would advise you not to do is to hang on to the handle that's at the top of the car. That can often put your shoulder in a position that's not quite ergonomic and can really increase the risk of injury. If you have a handlebar or even a handy bar, like those portable grab bars that you can get off of Amazon, or Performance Health Canada actually sells, I believe, the original, then you can use that as an extra lever for support. Try to also recline your seat back as far as possible to give you enough space to slide in and swivel. And it's a one leg at a time situation. So you don't need to get two legs in all at once. Something as simple as sitting on the edge of the seat, lifting one leg in, and then pivoting and lifting the other leg in. So take your time with it. But you want something that's going to reduce that friction and give yourself as much room in the front as possible.
So when you mentioned the handy bar, is that handle that can attach when you open the door? It attaches to that metal loop that is part of the locking mechanism on your door frame? Is that what
Yeah,
you
so
mean?
it will attach to your door latch. It will
Okay.
attach to the door latch. Yeah, there's various options out there. Performance Canada is a bit more on the pricier side. I think it's 40 and above, but there are options on Amazon. You'll have to see which one is going to work best for your type of vehicle, but they call it a handy bar or like a portable grab handle for your vehicle. Those would be the search terms I would use.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Putting on shoes and socks is difficult. Do step-in shoes work? And they're looking for any suggestions for types of shoes or socks to buy.
Okay. You know what I've seen that's been really popular with our PD patients lately has been Reebok slip-ons. I can't comment on the actual like model of the shoe, but I'll say go into Reebok if you're having trouble with shoes, because I've seen people being able to slip these on without even having to use like a long shoe horn or anything. You can also modify how you put on your shoes. Like often what I see when people say, I have trouble putting on my shoes, it's like, well, you're trying to do that while standing, right? So sit is always my recommendation to begin with. And then for socks, you can use a sock aid. However, you don't want to use a sock aid that's a flexible plastic. Like they're like a clear color and they fold. That's not the right sock aid for most people. It's going to be the hard plastic. And there should be a plastic, like a foam piece at the bottom of it as well. So if you put your socks over that, put that bad boy on the floor, pull up, that will get your socks on right away.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, next question. Someone is looking for tips for cooking and managing their way around the kitchen with Parkinson's.
Okay. Yeah, there's lots of things that you could change depending on what your specific area of concern is. I usually recommend frequently most used items, keep them out of the cupboard if possible, or you put them at the low height. That reduces the need for you to reach and can help you conserve energy in the kitchen. What people have also tried in the past before is you can buy these narrow carts from Home Depot, or even IKEA has a really good one, and you can use that to transport your items around the kitchen instead of having to lift and carry. You'll just be pushing it on the cart. Sorry, my earbud keeps falling off here. Use lightweight cookware. So, like your stainless steel pots and your cast irons, that's probably not going to be the best for you because that requires quite a bit of grip strength and also shoulder endurance at the same time. So breaking even your meal prep into stages, and if you can, sit at a countertop or sit at the dinner table to chop up items. It's all about conserving your energy and then planning it well. But there's sticky notes that you can put on the cupboards or around the oven area just to remind you to turn things off, for example, if memory is a problem, color coding your items. So there's a variety of strategies out there depending on what your specific area of concern is, but you can start with those.
Okay. I guess it's also helpful to know that I think it was about a year and a half ago or so, it might have been longer. We did a webinar on handy gizmos and gadgets. So we can send a link to that webinar when we send out our follow-up email so people can find some specific tools they might find useful in the kitchen as well.
Yeah, and if this one isn't on that list, I would suggest maybe sending something of this sort along. It's a swivel cutting board, swivel knife cutting board. So it has three spokes where you could put your fruits, your veggies, whatever you want on the cutting board. And the knife, it just requires one hand and can move in any direction. So you don't need to hold an item and slice and dice. It will do that for you.
Okay, I don't think that was on the list, so I'll make sure that that's included.
Great.
Okay, next question. Someone's asking about weighted utensils. They're
Mm.
asking if they actually help reduce tremor when eating, or should they spend more money on types of utensils that have a technology built into the handles that can counteract tremors. But they're a lot more expensive than the weighted cutlery, so they're trying to make a decision about what would help them the most.
I think there's a lot of gadgets that are out there. And I always like to start patients from the basics first, especially to conserve finances a little. Weighted utensils have been proven to be effective. However, they're not going to get rid of your tremors. So you're not going to go from having no like tremors while you're using utensils to having no tremors at all. It's a combination of a couple of things. So the weighted utensils do give feedback and can help dampen the tremors, especially for mild to moderate tremors. But without proper body positioning, you won't see an effect. So if you're eating a meal and your elbow's out here in space, that means your wrist is working, your elbow's working, your shoulder is working as well against the force of gravity. So what I like to teach is also what we call proximal support. So you want to support your body as much as possible. So I'll bring that elbow down, perhaps have it on a table, have my wrist on a table as well, and then I'm using my weighted utensils to come up. I'm using less effort in the muscle groups plus the weighted feedback through, and that can help to dampen that response. Gadgets you can try, but in my practice, it's usually a combination of the tool and also the body positioning that makes it an effective way to dampen tremors for meals.
That, that's a really great tip, putting your elbow on the table. I know, you know, my generation and older, we're always taught it's rude to put your elbow on the table, but in this
Mhm.
instance, like absolutely a good reason why to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next question. Someone's asking if exoskeletons are useful for Parkinson's patients.
Yeah, this is a growing area of research. In 2024, even there was like a big research paper that came out that showed that it does have some effect on memory and gait. But the exoskeletons can improve your strides, certainly. But it's usually you're looking for like high intensity exercises, right? So that's what you're using the exoskeleton for. High intensity exercises, rewiring the brain and getting some of that benefit through gait and memory. So yes, it can be useful, but it's going to be on a case by case basis whether or not it's necessary for you or whether you could achieve the same effect through traditional high intensity exercise methods.
Great. Okay, next question. Someone says, my Parkinson's tremor is bad enough that I lose control of the mouse clicks and the job I'm trying to do on my laptop. I feel there must be solutions out there encompassing alternative hardware like a single click mouse and or software like voice command modifications. What kind of suggestions do you have for someone who's having difficulty managing their computer, keyboard, mouse?
Yeah, that's very specific depending on the type of computer or mouse that you have. The good thing is our community has now moved, to having a lot of ergonomic options for the mouse in particular in Staples and London Drugs and such. So you want a mouse that's going to be quote unquote ergonomic. You might benefit from one that has a large thumb tracker. So instead of you needing to click, it's kind of that thumb movement that's helping. You can also change the sensitivity of your mouse. such that, if it has repeat clicks in a certain number of time, it's going to ignore the repeats. So it's only going to do the first click, for example. Same thing with your computer. There's various accessibility settings that are embedded through especially Apple products, but you'd have to look up the particular model of your 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 computer basically to know. Another thing that you could do is there's specialized keyboards. If you have access to an assistive technology clinic, there are specialized keyboards that will kind of assess how much dexterity you have and find a way to tweak it so that it's more easily ergonomic and accessible for you. But I think I would first start at looking at the accessibility settings of the devices you currently have, tweaking those, and then if you need more, then you might need that outpatient referral to an accessibility clinic.
Mhm. So that keyboard that you mentioned, is that one that could be paired, for instance, with a smartphone? Because I hear often that people have difficulty because, especially because smartphones, the screens are so small, and so the letters are so close together about autocorrect, sorry, mistyping and then having autocorrect, you know, put in the wrong words. And so they find it very difficult to text. So is that something that can be paired with a smartphone as well? Or do you have other suggestions for someone who's having difficulty using their smartphone?
Yeah, keyboards can be now, but I think it gets a little bit more costly, like depending on the type of keyboard that you type with. But the keyboard is, I personally wouldn't recommend using the keyboard over the smartphone because you need a little bit more dexterity on the keyboard, right? Like the smartphone is that finer movement, but you can get away with using, let's say, a stylus. You can get a weighted stylus with a bigger radius right at the bottom. So that puts your fingers in a position such that you're not using the fine motor muscles, you're mostly using your gross motor muscles, which Parkinson's patients tend to have better control over when it comes to their hand dexterity. So you could use a stylus for that. Voice to text is also another option. I know for some people, speech may also be an area of challenge, and so that may not be possible, but I would start with putting your smartphone or your tablet on like what's the word I'm looking for? Not a platform, like a stand. Yes, there we go. Like putting your smartphone on a stand and then using your stylus in that way. And again, positioning matters too, right? So don't try to do this up in space here. Have it on a stand or have your wrist relaxed and then you're using your stylus.
Good tip. Okay, so someone is asking about applying for handicap parking passes. They are worried about being rejected because they don't always look like they're quote unquote disabled, or worse, they're worried that if they do use a parking pass, that they would experience confrontations in a parking lot when they are parking from someone who doesn't understand that the symptoms, can be there worse at times than others. And so they're looking for any tips on applying for a handicap parking pass and also, as a follow up, how to respond to people who might judge them or say something to them in the parking lot.
Well, the good thing about applying for those parking passes is that typically you need physician signature. And so if you qualify, you qualify through your physician, right? There is really no other way around it. Unless in some cases, depending on your province, you could have a healthcare professional fill that out. So like Allied Health, for example, OTPT or SOP, if you're going to an outpatient, they might be able to fill out the application for you, but it's coming from a professional. So there's nothing subjective about it to say you don't get it because your symptoms are not enough, quote unquote, right? We know that symptoms fluctuate with Parkinson's. So if I would just get yourself assessed for it, start the application process. If you qualify, then move forward. And for the follow-up question, I would really like to say it's nobody's business, but I know you're probably looking for a bit more, but I do mean that. Like, invisible disabilities, they exist, right? And so unfortunately, you have people that will judge and comment. And so if you're a person that's a bit more worried about, a good suggestion I have is to create like a wallet-sized card. get it laminated at Staples or something, and you can put something as simple on it saying that I have Parkinson's disease. Things might take me a little bit longer. Please be patient. And I always recommend that wording because you can use that card in multiple settings at the grocery store, right? When you're trying to put your items out on the conveyor belt. People talk about waiting in the security line at the airports, right? So if you have that card with you, it's a card that you can give and show. You don't have to verbalize that you have Parkinson's because again, it's nobody's business. But if you feel that you want to have that communication, that card is enough.
Good idea. Okay, so the next question says, aside from working with a physiotherapist to help me with balance and gait problems, how can an occupational therapist help me? For instance, a couple of my biggest problems are that I sometimes cannot stop my body from moving forward until I run into a wall or a person, and I have troubles with fascination.
Mhm. So you can tackle fascination and freezing from LT and PT lenses. Often they're going to work in tandem, right? It's not one or the other. But from an OT perspective, really what I would be working with you on is cueing strategies, right? So we like to cue to visual floor lines. So when you're stepping, you're looking at what's the next break, right? Sometimes I've also recommended laser canes or rhythmic counting, like that rhythmic counting, get into that step. And physiotherapy also uses that to help initiate movement. On the OT side, we would also look at fall prevention strategies, especially with fascination, keeping the environmental setup at home and just keeping personalized routines to make those tasks and movement around the home a little bit more safer. And then finally, something that maybe you're not aware of is something called mindful breathing, right? So we use a lot of mindfulness, at least those of us who are trained in that as OT, to settle the body. So you'll notice when you're freezing, it's like the person's really trying to push through this wall, right? But if you usually tell somebody, like, take a breath, take a couple of series of deep belly breaths with me, three, and then shift your weight, right? Just shift your weight, move that bum a little bit side to side, that's enough to get going again with some rhythmic counting. So we like to incorporate mindful breathing within those physiotherapy exercises that you might get so that you get familiar with it and you can access it in the moment during freezing episode.
Mm. So you mentioned the laser canes, and I've seen those before. They have that little laser near the bottom that it makes a line on the floor, and
Mhm.
then they're encouraged to step over the line, and it kind of gets them out of that freezing. I've also seen a product. It attaches to, it looks like the tip of your shoe that puts a
Mhm.
laser there. Have you seen those or heard of those? And what are your opinions on those?
I've heard of them. I haven't used them personally in practice, so I can't quite say. I think it's supposed to be around the same idea as using the laser canes. Again, it's just a visual cue, but I haven't used them personally to comment further.
Okay. I just noticed someone said for regarding the hidden disabilities that we were talking about, there's something called a sunflower program. Have you heard of that?
No, I have not. Not a sun.
Okay.
What is it about? I'm
I
curious.
am there's not a lot of more information in the message, but I'm going to guess it like at Halloween, for instance, there's a certain color pumpkin. If you can't have certain kinds of foods, maybe it's something that you put on your vehicle, perhaps to signify that you have a hidden disability. We'll
Oh,
look into it and I'll add that into our follow-up email.
you gave
Okay,
me
let's,
something to look up. Thank you.
yeah. Okay, so the next question is, I think my partner could really benefit physically, mentally, and emotionally by participating in leisure activities. Is it better to get them out of the house to participate? And if so, how? Or what are some aids that you can suggest to make leisure activities easier at home? And should they try to see if a recreation therapist can make home visits?
Yeah, this is a common question as well. I'm going to assume when you say leisure activities, you're talking about engaging in like sports or activities. I would
I
first
think
start as
it could be games or
okay,
anything in social activities as well.
okay. I would first say that the activity has to be meaningful to your partner, right? The mistake that we make is we want to, increase that social engagement or increase that physical movement as much as possible, that we sign up for these activities that don't hold meaning for your partner. And so if it's something as like playing board games, right, that they want to engage in because maybe they want to participate in family game night with the extended family, that is meaningful. So first you have to find what is meaningful. And leisure activities can be tailored. Like you do not have to go to a recreation center or to participate in a group setting. For some people, that's a no-no, right? They would rather do something at home. One of the good things that came out of COVID-19 is that a lot of leisure programs also offer virtual options. So that's something that you can do within your home with your partner as well, right? The other thing I would suggest is to get into it slowly, right? If engaging in leisure activities hasn't been a part of that person's routine, even before their diagnosis, it's going to take some time to get there where it's now a part of their routine. So 15 minutes once a week, that's a win, right? You don't need to sign up for something that's necessarily an hour, 2 or 3 times a week. But even just 15 minutes to start, then you can scale it up to 30 minutes and then potentially 1 hour. But it usually helps when you can do the activity together. But I would stress something meaningful to start.
Great. Someone put in a comment following up about the Sunflower program. They say it's available at airports to signify that a person has hidden or invisible disabilities. So it orients staff at the airport that the person may need some assistance, that you can get them from staff at the airport, and it might be available at other places like train stations, but they're not sure.
Yeah, so look into the Sunflower program, certainly for whoever asked that question. I
Mhm.
would just also advise that little wallet card though, because it could be used in different settings, right?
Right.
So just think about that as an added option as well.
Thank you. Okay, next question. As my partner progresses into the later stages of Parkinson's, what are some key things we should have in our home to make their and my life easier?
Mm. So I am a big proponent of aging in place, and even with my own parents, I've already kind of started looking into some of these equipments. So what I would suggest is having your grab bars to begin with in the bathroom. Falls are typically going to happen in the bathroom, right? So you want to have grab bars on the wall by the tub near the shower inside the bathing area if possible, but you don't want suction grab bars there. There is a risk of them getting loose and resulting in a fall. Getting a shower chair, you can get the ones that are just inside the tub or inside the shower area, or you could even look at a tub transfer bench, right? So that reduces again standing and putting the leg over the tub to get in. I would also look at bed rails. So having a bed rail at the side of the bed gives another anchor point. Back up, sit down, and then swivel into the bed. Looking at layouts of your home, reducing clutter as much as possible. As mobility changes, you might consider, beds where you can raise the head of the bed up and so forth. Um, Looking at even the types of bed sheets that you use. There is a particular bed sheet that was made for the Parkinson's population where half of it is silk and then the rest of it is cotton. So that's something that I've often recommended. Transfer poles. So you can have a super pole that's just tension mounted from floor to ceiling. And that can be either in the living room as they're getting up from a chair, or that can be in the bedroom area. So I would start looking at equipment that you can slowly integrate into your home, and that might also be beneficial for you, right? It's like a grab bar, a bed rail, a shower seat. That's something that all of us can use on a daily basis.
Thank you. Okay, so someone else asked another question about the bathroom. They're starting to experience balance problems when they're bathing, and they've looked into the accessible tubs, the kind with the raised seat, and then there's a door that you step in and out of, but they're pretty expensive. And they're wondering if it's worth it or if there are less expensive equipment to help with bathing. I guess bathing in the bathtub as opposed to having a shower.
Mhm.
What are your
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
I would say it is an expensive renovation, right? So look into that tub transfer bench. You also have benches or seats, rather, I would call them, that where you can lower them into the tub, right? So for somebody who still wants to bathe rather than to shower, those are options. The tub transfer bench can get you over, and then you can have like a lift, almost like a bath lift inside the tub. Looking at handheld showers as well. Like for some, they'll like to soak, but being able to wash, just having a handheld shower that can reach into some of those more difficult areas. Properly placed grab bars again in that tub area. I would start with those equipment because some of them you can get them from your local equipment loan programs, other than the bath lift. That one is more specialized. But start there and see what would work before moving on to, like a big investment.
Mm. So is a bath lift something that just sits at the bottom of the tub, or is it something you actually have to get someone to install?
No, it would sit inside and then it's no, not battery operated. Yeah, I'm trying to think through this. And so you just press a button and it goes up and down, right? But it's very specialized. Like I know I'm in Alberta, so for those in Alberta, you would have to access it through the Alberta Aids to Daily Living program. So that would be an occupational therapist. Um, so yeah, there's different options out there. Some of them have a combination of being able to transfer you in and also have the lift function. They're specialized, but I think they might be less expensive than the big investments because at least when you go through those not the loan, the like AIDS daily living, a portion of it is covered for you, right? So
Right.
it it's a bit more financially comfortable, I would say.
Okay, that's a great tip. I've never heard of that before.
Mhm.
So someone has asked about dining, and it's not about the cutlery. It's about, I guess it's about the bowls and the plates that they are having troubles either getting something onto their spoon or piercing something with a fork, chasing the food around the plate. What would you suggest as far as um, dinnerware or something like that that can help you get the food onto your cutlery?
So the issue is getting the food onto the cutlery?
I think so. Like I
Okay.
guess, it's pushing it to the edge of the plate and then the food goes over the edge instead of getting onto the
Oh,
fork.
okay. Okay. Yeah, so you can use, well, for one, so that your plates or your bowl is not moving away from you, is that you can get them suctioned, right? So you can use suction. If you don't like the idea of using suction plateware, you can also get Dyson. So Dyson is usually like blue or green. You can get rolls of it off of Amazon. If you ever notice, I advertise Amazon a lot, not because I like them, it's just it's simpler and easier to return. But you can put Dyson underneath your plates, and again, it would almost create like a surface where you won't see some of that friction happening. It would stay in place. And you can cut it to shape as well. So that's an option there. For food, getting off your plate when you're trying to gather it, use plate guards. So there's plate guards that you can put on the edge of the plate and they're removable. So you can use them between the different dishes as well. And then you also have some plates and bowls that are a bit angled. So they'll be more angled towards the back because most of the time when we're trying to scoop, we're going in this direction. So if you don't want to use a plate guard, you could get some of those angled plates themselves.
Okay. And so that product is called Dyson.
Dyson, Dycem, Dyson.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I will add that to the email. Another question. Do you have a suggestion for back and neck support aid for someone who has a bypassing pump?
So I don't have a particular brand suggestion that is very, very specialized. It's not something that I have worked with, but I do know that there's different ones out there. So I would probably start with like your physician for that one. Yeah, sorry, I can't give you more information on that.
No, that's okay. And we've got, looks like just one more question unless another one pops in. The person says, my partner seems to freeze a lot when turning corners and going through doorways. What can we do at home and when we go out to help them get over these freezing episodes? And I know you mentioned the laser, the
Mhm.
laser products, but what else can they do?
Yeah, so that's common in like, just narrow places or between transitions. So cueing works too, like stepping over a line, counting 1, 2, 3, go. Um, Placing high contrast floor strips can also give you a visual target at thresholds. So most people, there's a transition between, let's say, their bathroom and their hallway, right? Or the kitchen and the dining room. So putting high contrast floor strips can help to trigger that there's going to be that transition. And so you want a longer stride length to go over there, right? So using those visual targets, rhythmic counting continuously, breathing, the weight shift, all those strategies still apply within the home.
Perfect. Well, I don't see any more questions. So thank you to everyone who submitted the questions for Roseleen. If you'd like to have a one-on-one discussion with a member of our support and information team, you can reach out to us at support@parkinson.ca, or you can call 1-888-664-1974. On behalf of Parkinson Canada and everyone here today, I want to thank you, Roseleen, for joining us and answering our questions about occupational therapy and Parkinson's. Everyone should watch your email inboxes for the follow-up email that's going to include a link to the recording of the webinar and the resources and links that we've mentioned here today. Our second Ask the Expert session is taking place in a little over an hour from now. We're going to be joined by a pharmacist who will be answering your questions. If you haven't already registered, it's not too late. The link to register is in the chat window now. We also hope that you'll join us for our next webinar, Understanding and Managing Falls and Parkinson's, taking place on Wednesday, November 19th from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern. Watch your email inboxes for more details and the registration link. And lastly, a reminder that when the webinar closes, we hope you'll take a moment to fill out the short survey. It helps us plan programming that's relevant to you. On behalf of all of us at Parkinson Canada, I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Maybe we'll see you in about an hour, and we'll see you next month for sure. Take care.